Okay, welcome to this episode of Photo Theology. I'm your host, Doug, and today we have the Canon G15 going up against the Pentax MX-1, and I'm pretty excited about this episode. The reason for it is that you've got two cameras that are meant to do the exact same thing within a camera lineup, which you're looking at here is a high quality post-production based point and shoot camera. So this is gonna turn out to be pretty cool. As you guys should know by now, the camera world has evolved immensely, and the way things sit right now when it comes to digital cameras, when you talk about point and shoots, is if you were looking below, effectively, we'll say a $350 price point. Okay, or we'll say cameras that normally start off at $400 that drop down to like $350 or $300 at the end of their life cycle. Okay, if you're looking at cameras that are below those, and if you're talking about image quality, then in today's camera market, those cameras cannot take a picture and have the image blown up. They can't do that. You don't have the crop factor that you used to have, so on and so forth. The megapixels are practically irrelevant in today's camera market because of that, and you notice that cameras now concentrate on longer zoom. The reason for this is that cameras are built for a digital viewing market, such as cell phones, I want to say monitors, televisions, digital photo frames, tablets, so on and so forth, versus a print market, which has been around for practically ever since film. So you have that difference there. Cameras, though, that are meant for photography, that are meant for a post-production setup, those cameras have moved in price up to about a $4-ish on up price point. And the reason for this is because of the fact that they are cameras that define the manufacturer for who the manufacturer is. So when you look at the Canon G, for example, versus looking at, the Canon A series. All right, the Canon A series does not define Canon in any way, shape, or form. It may be a power shot, but it's not, it's definitely not defining Canon. The G series, though, is a camera that you can look at, Canon and say, this point and shoot defines this camera company. Same thing as if you were talking about a small, compact point and shoot, or small and sleek, as they like to call them, then it would be the Canon S series that you would be talking about. Now, in this case, you have the Canon G and you have the Pentax MX-1. Now, the MX-1 is a newer camera in the Pentax lineup, and Pentax does not have the kind of legacy brand built up that Canon has in terms of the G. So the G has been around pretty much since the beginning of time. The Pentax hasn't. However, this is Pentax's attempt to go toe-to-toe with Canon. And you're going to find some things pretty interesting here. Now, to begin with, the ISOs that you're going to be looking at, which you've already seen in part of this video already since I've been talking, are going to range basically from 100 to 64. And you're going to see why I don't go to the 12,000. Both cameras are highly comparable in their overall setup. In terms of the cameras and the main stats you need to know about them, both cameras can shoot 1080p video. Both cameras have a 1.8 f-stop to a 2.5 or 2.8, depending on what camera you're talking about. They're going to have the faster lens speeds, and that is, when I talk 1.8, I'm talking on the wide. The 2 point whatever is actually based on the telephoto of the camera. So these cameras are actually designed for low light based photography. Now, the reason why this is important is because if you were looking at getting a camera for somebody, or if you're looking at getting a camera for yourself, but you want to have a point and shoot camera, but the problem is lighting is an issue, meaning you don't always want to use a flash, and more importantly, you want the camera to be able to take a picture indoors without having 5 million lights on, and the thing to be in autofocus, or you don't want to have blur in your image. these are the kind of cameras that you have to look at to get those kinds of requirements met in terms of camera performance. So the faster lens that you get on these cameras are cameras that are built for the sake of being able to shoot in low lit environments and give you great results. Now, between the two cameras, you have a very standard way of how Canon is building their G unit, using the Digix 5 processor, using a 12 megapixel CMOS sensor, and it has all the way up to a 12,000 ISO. Now, I do have to throw out a disclaimer here to this. Just because the unit has a 12,000 ISO, that does not mean you can go all the way up to 12,000, as you will notice by the end of this video. The reason why I only go up to 64 is because 12,000 is just like off the mark. Really doesn't work. Okay. Now, with the Pentax is actually using the newer filtering concepts that they have for, I want to say, the Pentax, the K52S, and that is apparent in the way that the noise is set up in the camera. So you're going to have that. You also are using a SMC lens, which is an excellent lens when it comes to mechanics, and the Pentax unit itself is a phenomenal unit. Now, between these two cameras, because you've clearly gotten as far as I need you to in the video now, to start talking about the two cameras and their differences, you have a choice you have to make. Okay? The way that Canon is built, sharpness is the main piece. The way the Pentax is built, it is noise control, which is the main piece. So the way this plays out is both cameras are defined by the concept of clarity, okay? The ability to shoot in low light without needing a flash. That's how the cameras are pretty much presented with these kind of lens speeds that these cameras are equipped with. But there's a divide when it comes to the concept of clarity, because clarity can be judged in a way of sharpness. And one way, if you want to think of sharpness, is do you need to blow the image up? And more importantly, do you need to blow it up past the 12 megapixels? If you need that, then the Canon is stronger in that arena. Where Pentax takes a different turn is their system actually is a softer system. Now, that could be based on the fact that they're using a brand new filtering system and there hasn't been any software to truly utilize or adapt that filtering system in the way that the Canon Digix 5 processor has basically been around in the form of the Digix 4, Digix 3, Digix 2, so on and so forth. Okay, so software is able to capitalize on the Canon from that end. But with the Pentax, you actually don't have that. You have a different kind of setup. And in that setup, in the future, the camera actually can produce a better image, possibly. But as of now, it is a softer image. Now, where the Pentax is clearly superior to the Canon, and you can see this in the video, is on the noise control. Simply put, this is how good the noise control is between the Pentax versus the Canon. When I had all of my stuff set up and I was comparing the shots, so on and so forth, the first time around, because I had to go back into this video 2 times, the first time around I actually had the 400 ISO going up against the 100 ISO with the Canon, and I couldn't see a difference. So the Pentax was at a 400 ISO, the Canon was at a 100 ISO, and I thought everything was perfectly fine. And I just wasn't, being that thorough as I was going through it. I knew the Pentax had a superior, ISO setup, but that really threw me for a curve, and then I had to go back and redo it. With the Canon versus the Pentax, hands down, the Pentax has better color balance. Hands down, the Pentax has better raw imagery structure for programs and stuff like that. It definitely does. For this setup, I actually used Corel, and both cameras had an off exposure. In other words, their whites were blown out, so on and so forth, and I had Corel just do an auto correction of them both. Now, truth be told, the reason why I had to do this was not because I had to use Corel for the Pentax. I actually didn't. There were other programs that I could use, which were free programs that could also process the Pentax's RAW the way you see it here. But for the Canon, the problem that I ran into was nothing could read the Canon's color balance slash, overall exposure setup correctly. So I decided to make them neutral and Corel, and then I allowed the chips to fall where they fell. With this, you can clearly see that the Canon does suffer from some chromatic aberration. That's obvious. Also, you will notice with the Canon, its dynamic range is just not as compelling as the Pentax's, but the sharpness is what the Canon's going to really try to play out here. One of the bigger weaknesses, though, of the Canon in the overall setup that we have here, though, is that the sharpness is only short-lived up to about a 400 ISO, and then after that you do start to see the degradation of the image in a way that some people might find unacceptable. So that is a harsh reality. Now, I will throw out there that if you use other programs that can mask the noise, you obviously will get better results than what you see here. However, on phototheology, what we tend to like to do is look at the nakedness in terms of noise, versus anybody can grab a program, throw it in, and say, ooh la la, look what I did right here. Okay, although I did use Corel, I use Corel as a neutral ground, because first off, Corel is not the best type of program when it comes to noise control. And that's not what I was looking for in the first place in terms of what I was trying to output. I wanted to show you the noise difference here. Now, mechanically, hands down, the Pentax autofocus is faster. It shoots faster. This camera even has, a tilt screen. The flaw to the Pentax, and this is where Canon got it right, is one simple thing: hot shoe. For the life of me, I cannot understand how Pentax did not have enough common sense for the hot shoe. If you go back and look at the model at the front of the video, okay, you're going to see there's a barren spot on top of the camera where there should be a hot shoe. How in the world did they miss this? It's beyond me. Hopefully in the future they come out with, a firmware update that will allow you to do wireless, speed flash. If they do, then you're A-okay. But this is why I didn't go past, I want to say, the 6400 ISO. As you see, the Canon can't handle it, and as you see, it can't handle 64. The Pentax is still very well intact compared to the Canon. Like I said, this is the kind of thing that if you guys are looking for a point and shoot, or you want to get somebody a point and shoot, and you want it to be a solid camera, then this is where you want to go. I will be doing another video, though, explaining the ISO advantages in terms of lens speed with a faster camera like what you see here in the Premiere line of the Pentax and the Canon versus, we'll say, just like an entry-level Nikon D, 5100 or a 3100 or whatever camera I decide to choose. From that end, I mean, this is the gist of what you've got. Now, one other thing I will point out with these cameras is that the video. Video-wise, the Canon shoots great video, but the problem is that it centralizes on one point of light and then basically blows out the exposure and under or over when it records its video. The Pentax's dynamic range when it comes to video is damn near flawless. So, if you are talking about video, keep in mind, Pentax autofocus is faster when it comes to video than the Canon, and also it has superior dynamic range. However, the Canon still has a sharper video than the Pentax does. So, with that being said, you guys take care, and I'll talk to you later. Alright, bye-bye.